Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Babel on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Aleph of Masechta Pesachim, Daf 101. Oh boy, it's a good one. A lot of very juicy inyanim over here. Kiddus b'makom sooda. Who's ever heard of that? It's going to be a machlokas over here. Kiddus b'makom sooda. Shinui makom. When you're eating in one place and then you go to eat in another place, do you have to make a new bracha? Okay, we're going to get into different details on that. The bracha of Hatov ve'ametiv comes up sort of in passing, which is when you're drinking wine and then some new wine comes out. Do you make a bracha of Hatov ve'ametiv on the new wine? And the Gemara today ends with a shtickle cliffhanger for tomorrow. So what more can you ask for in a daf of Gemara? We're going to start on daf Kuf Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Osam b'nei adam shekitchu b'veis hakneses. Wow. So you have so people, they went to shul on Friday night and they made Kiddush dartin. Now, growing up, we didn't have this inyan. We didn't make Kiddush in shul. I don't know why. I was learning with my friend the other day and he didn't know why either, because in his shuls they always made Kiddush on Friday night in shul. Whatever it is, where I grew up, they didn't. But, so in a place where they make Kiddush in shul on Friday night, so the shaila is twofold. Number one, do you have to make Kiddush again when you get home? You already heard Kiddush in shul, do you have to make it again? That's question number one. Question number two is that, well, you already made a bracha on wine now, so when I'm gonna drink wine at home, do I need to make another bracha on the wine? Now, assuming that you're making Kiddush again at home, so then mistama not, because you're gonna be making a bracha on wine on the Kiddush, unless maybe you could say, no, I'm not even gonna go there. Whatever it is, it's a question really of Shinui makom. Is that basically, if you're gonna make a Kiddush on the wine in shul, do you also have to make a Kiddush on the wine? If you're gonna make a bracha on wine as part of Kiddush in shul, does that bracha, from a technical brachos standpoint, also cover the wine that you're gonna be drinking at home? Okay, so Osam b'nei adam shekitchu b'veis hakneses. So these people who made Kiddush in shul, Amar Rav yidei yayin lo yatsu yidei Kiddush yatsu. So says Rav, look, they're yotzei Kiddush. You don't need Kiddush b'makom sooda. You don't need, what does Kiddush b'makom sooda mean? It means to make Kiddush, right, on Friday night. I assume we all know what Kiddush is. The bracha on wine on Friday night, where we also bless Shabbos. We do it on Yom Tov too. So when you make Kiddush, do you also have to do that in the place where you're going to be eating? What if you just make Kiddush and you don't eat anything? What if after shul? I mean, I'm sure this is probably already big machlokas. I don't know. But just to understand, let's say you're at shul and after shul there's like there's a Kiddush, okay? So you make Kiddush on whatever. And then you go home. You didn't actually eat anything. So when you go home, do you have to make Kiddush again? You didn't have Kiddush b'makom sooda. You may have made Kiddush, but you didn't eat anything. You didn't have Kiddush where you ate. So that's what we're saying over here, that's what we're talking about over here. If you're in shul on Friday night, and they make Kiddush, and you heard Kiddush at shul, but you didn't eat anything, you're going to go home and eat. So does that Kiddush count? Says Rav, yes, it does. That's fine. However, he says, yidei yayin lo yatsu. But he's not yotzei wine, meaning when he gets home, so while he doesn't have to make Kiddush again, he is going to have to make a bracha if he's planning to drink wine at his sooda. So he's going to have to make a bracha on that wine, because the fact that he drank wine at shul, that doesn't matter, because the Rashbam sort of paints it in a way of hesech hadas. That kilu, from the time he gets to shul to the time he gets home, he's going to have his mind on other things. He's not really, so it's going to be, since he's going to take his mind off of drinking wine while he's on his way home, when he gets home and drinks the wine in the sooda, he'll make a separate bracha. However, according to Rav, he does not need to make Kiddush again. Ushmuel Amar says Shmuel Afi de Kiddush lo yatsu, says Shmuel that they aren't even yotzei Kiddush. So anybody who heard Kiddush in shul, when they get home, they will have to repeat Kiddush, because you need Kiddush b'makom sooda, and the fact that you heard Kiddush in shul doesn't count because you didn't eat at shul. When you get home, you're going to eat, you're going to have Kiddush b'makom sooda, and so you make Kiddush at home as well. El Rav lo malei the kadusha b'veisei. Well, then according to Rav, if he's Yotze already with the Kiddush that he heard in Shul, well then how come everybody, when they get home, they make Kiddush at home as well? Well, he may have heard Kiddush, but everybody else in his family didn't hear Kiddush, so he's going to make Kiddush in order to be Motzi everybody else in Kiddush. Okay? Now according to Shmuel, who says that you need Kiddush b'makom sooda, so then what's the point of having Kiddush at Shul? Nobody's going to be Yotze. Everyone's going home to eat, and they're going to have to make Kiddush at home. The Kiddush that they make in Shul doesn't count, so what's the point? Well, because there are going to be guests. There are guests in the Shul. Because there are visitors, people who are going to be eating and drinking and sleeping in the Shul, so we're making Kiddush for them. But nobody at the Shul is Yotze the Chiyuv of Kiddush. When they get home, they're going to make Kiddush when they get to their Shabbos sooda. Vaz the Shmuel the time Shmuel and Kiddush alav makom sooda. Boom. And Shmuel is consistent with his opinion, which is in Kiddush alav makom sooda, you have to make Kiddush where you're going to eat. Therefore, you're not Yotze with the Kiddush in Shul. So the Bnei Yeshiva understood from there. Hanimile mibayis levayis aval makom lemakom b'chad beis alo. So the students figured, okay, fine, very good. In Kiddush alav makom sooda, great. So what's considered makom sooda? What if I make Kiddush in my living room and then I go to my dining room to eat? Is it considered b'makom sooda? So they wanted to assume that yes, it would be. That Kilu, if you're in one building, so if you're at Shul, for example, and you hear Kiddush Darton, and then you go home, you're going to have to make another Kiddush because Shul is not where you're going to be eating. They're two different houses, two different buildings. However, the students assumed that one house, Kilu, if I make Kiddush in my living room and then eat in my dining room, that should be acceptable. Amarlu Rav Anon bar Tachlifa. So then Rav Anon bar Tachlifa responded to them and he said, there were many times that I was in front of Shmuel, that he would go down from the roof to the ground floor and he would make Kiddush again. Apparently, even within one house, you wouldn't be able to change rooms, which is interesting. Okay, I don't know that that's la'alacha, but it's an interesting concept that even just going from one place in your house to another place, you would have to make a separate Kiddush because you didn't eat where in the first place in the house where you were. Rav Huna also says you have to make Kiddush where you're eating, which is interesting because Rav Huna was a student of Rav, and he seems to be passing like Shmuel, which is interesting. Anyways, so Rav Huna also gets on the Ein Kiddush alav makom sooda train. The Rav Huna Kaddish, because one time we know that Rav Huna made Kiddush, and then the candle went out, and he didn't have light anymore, so he couldn't eat. So what did he do? So he brought all of his utensils and things to the Beganone de Rabba, the chuppah of his son Rabba Bre de Rav Huna. Now, I think that what this means is not his actual wedding, because Mistama, Rav Huna would have been at his son's wedding. It means the Sheva Brachas. Okay, his son and his wife, his son and his new daughter-in-law were having Sheva Brachas somewhere. Rav Huna wasn't there. Anyways, it was a Friday night, and his candle went out, and so he made Kiddush already. He didn't eat. So he just gathered up his things and went to his son Rabba, where they were having Sheva Brachas and there was light over there. So he figured he'll just go eat there. V'kadosh v'ta'imidi. And what did he do before he ate anything? He first made Kiddush. Ha'makosavar and Kiddush alav makom sooda. So we see that Rav Huna also holds that you dafka need to make Kiddush where you're eating. And even though he had made Kiddush in his own home, since the candle went out before he had a chance to eat epis, he went to his son's house where there was light, and before eating anything, he made Kiddush again because he wasn't Yotze with the Kiddush that he had at home where he didn't eat anything. Rabba also says that you need to make Kiddush in the place where you're eating, and if you don't eat, you're not Yotze. Because Abaye says, Ki avina beimar, when we were by the house of master, i.e. Rabbah, Ki avim makadesh, when Rabbah would make Kiddush, Omrulani would say to us, Ti'imu midi, make sure that you eat epis. Dilma azlisu ushpiza, out of concern that maybe while you're on your way to wherever you are staying, misakor l'chushraga, the candles are going to go out, I guess probably in the place where you're staying. V'lo mekadesh l'chu b'veis achila, and what will end up happening is that you won't be making Kiddush where you ate, Kilu, because you heard Kiddush over here with me, Rabbah, and unless you eat something, what happens if the lights go out where you're staying and you don't end up eating over there? In which case, v'kedusha da'acha lo nafkisu, and you won't be yotze with the Kiddush that you heard over here by me, Rabbah, then Kiddush elef makom sooda, because you have to have Kiddush b'makom sooda. So we see that Rabbah also holds that you need to have Kiddush where you're going to eat, and therefore he would recommend to whoever was with him and was planning to go back to eat wherever they were staying, or in their own homes, why don't you eat something over here where you're hearing Kiddush? That way you know that you're Yotzei Kiddush, and even if when you get home the lights turned out and you might not even end up eating, as the Rashbam points out, at least you know that you were Yotzei Kiddush over here, which is also interesting just in terms of the definition of a sooda. We're not really getting into details about what brachas or what kinds of foods, but just interesting enough already from here is that they're not like sitting down and having a whole sooda, mamish, like a big long thing. Rabbah says, look, just eat something, and that would at least be considered Kiddush b'makom sooda. So Kilu, if you're going out for lunch or something, but before lunch you make Kiddush and you eat, a shtickle crackers and herring or epis, so it sounds like from Rabbah that should already be considered enough. Kilu, make Kiddush, eat something, and then you're Yotzei, and you're Yotzei Kiddush. And then when you go to your friend's house for lunch or whatever, so then you're already Yotzei Kiddush. You don't need to hear Kiddush again. I mean, you can, but anyways, I'm not saying la halacha. I don't know la halacha, but I could hear the argument from here that maybe just eating a shtickle after Kiddush would be enough. Again, I don't know, do you have to have mizonos? I don't know. But it sounds like from here that you don't necessarily need to have a whole meal. Ini, is this really true that Rabbah holds like Shmuel, that in Kiddush elef makom sooda? V'amar Abaye, but Abaye said, Komili demar, that all of the things of Rabbah, have a Ovid Karav, he would always paskin like Rav Levar me'ani tlos, the Ovid Kishmuel, with the exception of the following three inyanim that he would do like Shmuel. What are these three inyanim? Matir, and by the way, none of them are Kiddush b'makom sooda, so Mistama, we would assume that Rabbah holds like Rav regarding this. But anyways, so what are the three places where Rabbah holds like Shmuel? Matir mibeged leveged, that you can take tzitzis strings from one garment and put them onto another garment. Umadlik miner l'ner, and when it comes to Hanukkah candles, you can light from one candle to another candle. V'alacha Reb Shimon b'greire, and the halacha is like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar shein miskaven. Guys, remember davar shein miskaven? 1,000 years ago, right? Not exactly 1,000,000 years ago like brachas, but definitely a good 1,000. The Tanyas will learn in a brisa. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Gora Adam Mita Kisei V'Safsel B'Shabbos. Reb Shimon says that a fellow is allowed to drag a bed, a chair, and a bench on Shabbos Uvachal Iskavin Lasos Charetz, as long as he doesn't intend to make a furrow. Because since it may happen, it may not happen, it's davar shein miskaven. If it does happen, he didn't intend it for it to happen. So Reb Shimon says it's mutter, davar shein miskaven is mutter. So we see that Rabbah paskins like Shmuel regarding these three things. However, Kiddush makom sooda was not one of them. So therefore, I would assume that Rabbah should hold like Rav when it comes to Kiddush makom sooda, and say that you don't need Kiddush makom sooda. So, and for the Gemara, Kichumer Rav hava ovid kikule de Rav lo hava ovid. Oh, that when we say that Rabbah would always paskin like Rav, it's when Rav was more stringent. Rabbah would paskin like Rav. There were three exceptions where he paskin like Shmuel, who was more lenient. However, in general, he would paskin like Rav when he was more stringent. In this case, he's being more lenient. You don't have to make Kiddush again. You're already Yaitza. So Rabba didn't necessarily hold like Rav when it came to leniencies. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan hat gesagt, Afidei Yayin Nami Yatsu. So Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with both Rav and Shmuel and says that not only are you Yotzei Kiddush like Rav, but you don't need to make a bracha again on the wine. So he takes it a step further than Rav. Rav said that you're Yotzei Kiddush, but when you get home, make another bracha on the wine you're going to eat with your meal. Says Rabbi Yochanan that not only are you Yotzei Kiddush that you hear from what you heard in Shul, but when you get home, you don't even need to make another bracha on the wine that you're going to drink with your meal. He feels that it's not considered a hesech hadas. It's not considered enough of changing your mind. Okay. Of kilu getting distracted and not thinking about the wine anymore. First, Rabbi Yechanan the Taimed, Amar B'chonin Bar Abaye, Amar B'das, Amar Yechanan, Echad Shinui Yayin, Ve'echad Shinui makom, Ein Tzarich Levarich. Very interesting. So this is Rabbi Yochanan is consistent with his opinion, which is that when it comes to Shinui Yayin and Shinui makom, you don't have to make a bracha. What's Shinui Yayin? Shinui Yayin is when they bring out new wine. So you're at a meal and you're drinking one bottle of wine. Baruch Hashem, you finished the new bottle of wine. You finished that bottle of wine, so they bring out a new bottle of wine. So it's different wine. So Rabbi Yochanan says you wouldn't have to make another bracha. Right, but the Rashbam points out, Aval Hatov HaMeitiv Mias Mevarich Im Meshubach Min HaRishon. That's super interesting. So the Rashbam points out, so what this means is that according to Rabbi Yochanan, you would not make another bracha on the wine. You don't need to make a new B'rei Pri Hagafen, even though it's new wine. However, you would make a bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv. Now, he then says, if the wine is better than the first one, which tends to be the standard, sort of like the default assumption of how the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv works, that if you bring out a new bottle of wine and it's better than the first one, then you make the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv. And maybe it comes from this Rashbam. Everyone learns Aviv Pesachim, they learn this Rashbam. He seems to be saying that Hatov HaMeitiv is dependent on the wine actually the new wine being better than the first one. So you say Hatov HaMeitiv, but apparently it's not so pashut. I think maybe even we saw like a different opinion there. I think maybe the opinion of Rashi, which is that I think maybe in brachas that it's not necessarily about a better wine. It could just be about ribu yain, the shefa of wine. It doesn't, even if it's not necessarily a better wine, but wow, there's so much wine. We just finished this bottle. Oh my gosh, there's more. You make the bracha Hatov HaMeitiv. But anyway, so it's interesting to see that the opinion of the Rashbam is taka that it's about the new bottle of wine being better than the original bottle of wine, which may be why people automatically assume that that's how the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv works, because the Rashbam is sort of the standard. This is the big sugya of, I don't know, these are the big sugyas of everything over here, apparently in Aviv Pesachim, Kiddus makom sooda, Shinui makom, all the great things. And over here he's mentioning that Hatov HaMeitiv is based on better wine. Very interesting. Meisvei, we have a kasha. I got so excited about Hatov HaMeitiv, I forgot about the important part over here, which is V'echad Shinui makom in tzarich levarich, as well as Shinui makom, meaning, in our case, we made Kiddush at home, in Shul, and now you get home. So Rabbi Yochanan would say you do not need to make a bracha on the wine that you're going to eat with your meal, since you already made a bracha on the wine, on the Kiddush in Shul, and the fact that you change the locations is irrelevant. Meisvei, we have a kasha against Rabbi Yochanan, Shinui makom tzarich levarich, Shinui yayin ein tzarich levarich. That Shinui makom, you do taka need to make a new bracha, and therefore if you hear Kiddush in Shul, you would have to make a bracha on the wine that you're going to eat during the meal. Shinui yayin ein tzarich levarich. However, if you're eating at a meal and they bring out different wines, you don't have to make a new bracha on the wine. Again, maybe Hatov HaMeitiv, arguably, Seder. Tiyuvta de Rabbi Yochanan Tiyuvta. So this is taka kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says you do not need to make a bracha for Shinui makom, but this brisa seems to be saying that you do. Yosef of Idi bar Oven, Kamed of Chizda, Yosef of Chizda v'Kamed Mishmei of Huna. So if Idi bar Oven was sitting before Rav Chizda Okay. And Rav Chizda was saying in the name of Rav Huna, Hada Omar Shinui makom tzarich levarich l'shanu ela mibayis levayis aval mimakom lemakom lo. So Rav Chizda was saying in the name of Rav Huna that when we say that you need to make a bracha on Shinui makom, that if you're eating in one place and then you go to eat in another place, you have to make a new bracha. L'shanu ela mibayis levayis. It's only if you're going from one house to another house. Aval mimakom lemakom lo. But if within one house, you're just going from one room to another room, so then you would not need to make a new bracha. Amar Rav Yidi bar Oven. So it says Rav Yidi bar Oven to Rav Chizde. Hachi tanina le b'masnisa devei Rav Heinik. V'amila b'masnisa devei bar Heinik kavasich. So it says Rav Yidi bar Oven, oh, Rav Chizde. Take, we have a brisa which says the same thing. Well, if that's the case, then why didn't Rav Huna just quote the brisa? Right, Rav Chizda was quoting Rav Huna that Shinui makom is from one building to another building, but within the house you make the same. You don't need to make a new bracha. Rav Yidi bar Oven points out that it's taka brisa. So why didn't Rav Huna just say it was a brisa? So Rav Huna masnisa lo shmile. You know why? He didn't hear of the brisa. He wasn't aware of it, so he didn't say it. Okay. So now we have an interesting machlokas between Rav Chizda and Rav Sheshes. So Rav Chizda said, when we say that you need to make a bracha when you go from one place to another place, lo amaron ela b'dvarim she'ein tunim bracha la'achrein b'mkomon avad dvar matunim bracha la'achrein b'mkomon in tzarich levarech my taima lekivo kamo hodar. Very, very interesting stuff. Let's read it again. When we say that if you go from one place to another place, you have to make a new bracha. That's only things that you don't need to make a bracha in their original place. The Rashbam wants to assume, I imagine that this is machlokas, but the Rashbam wants to assume that what this means is even like an ala michya. So if you eat pizza in your house, and then you leave to go somewhere else, you're going to have to come back home to your house to make a bracha achrona on pizza. So because you're going to have to come back anyways, well, if you go to your friend's house, and he also has pizza, you don't need to make a new bracha on the pizza, since you know that you're going to have to come back anyways to your house to make a bracha achrona on the pizza that you ate at your house. So therefore it's considered all one kvius. He didn't actually get up from the original eating, as opposed to if you're eating like ice cream, and then you go to your friend's house to eat ice cream. So when you got up, you don't have to come back home to make a bracha achron on the ice cream. So therefore the assumption is when you got up, and that was that. And you weren't intending to come back. You didn't intend necessarily to have in mind that when you go to your friend's house, you're going to eat more ice cream. So therefore you have to make a new bracha when you get to your friend's house to eat the ice cream. But when it comes to something like pizza or certainly bread, something that you're going to have to come back home in order to make a bracha achrona, so then when you get to your friend's house and he also has pizza dartin, you would not need to make a new bracha. Very interesting stuff. So again, when we say that you have to make a new bracha, that's only for things that you don't have to make a bracha achrona in the original place, such as ice cream. But something that you would need to make a bracha in the original place, let's just say bread. If you were eating bread, you would have to come back to where you were eating in order to make a bracha achrona. Well then, ein tzarich levarich, you do not need to make a new bracha when you get to your friend's house. My time outcome the kiva kamo hadar, because you're going to be going back to your original kvias. Right? It's not considered like you are done eating, because you know that you're going to have to come back anyways to make a bracha achrona, so it's all considered like one big eating. For Rav Sheshes amar echad zeh v'echad zeh tzarich levarich, whereas Rav Sheshes' opinion is that whether you're going to have to come back home to make a bracha achrona or not, when you get to your friend's house, you're going to have to make a new bracha. So if you're eating pizza at your house, and you go to your friend's house to eat pizza, you're going to have to make another bracha on pizza. But that's also assuming that pizza anyways is something that you would have to come back home to make a bracha achron on. But let's just say it's something like bread, which is, I think, probably more widely accepted that you would have to come back to your original place to make a bracha achrona. So, says Rav Sheshes, even so, if you go to your friend's house to eat, and you eat something dark, and you'd have to make a new bracha. Meisvei, we have a kasha against Rav Chizda b'nei Chabur, shayu musubin lishtos. If you have fellows who were reclining to drink, okay, fine, v'akru aglein, lotzei siklas chosen oli praskala, and they uprooted their legs to go greet a chosin or a kala, meaning, so from the fact, as Rashban points out, that it says akru ragleim, that they had to like uproot themselves to go to a chosin and kala, it sounds like something that you would have to, that you generally speaking would make a bracha achrona first, then finish your meal and go greet them. But because it was so last minute, you just kind of jumped at the opportunity to greet a chosin or kala, that you didn't make a bracha achrona. So when they go out to greet the chosin kala, they do not need to make a bracha achrona. And when they come back to resume their meal, they do not need to make another bracha rishona. But wait, when is this? That's only if they left an elderly person or a sick person in the house, aval, but if there was no zakin or chola left in the house, meaning if everyone just bounced, well then in that case, when they leave, they would need to make a bracha achrona first, and when they come back, they'd have to make a bracha rishona. So what do we see? So we see that this is something that we're assuming that they were koveya on, something that they would have to make a bracha achrona b'mkomon, and yet we're saying that unless there is somebody left at home when they leave, when they come back, they would have to make a new bracha. So we see that even though they were planning to come back to the original kviyos, they still do have to make a new bracha. From the fact that we say that they dafka uprooted their legs, so we're going to assume that that's talking about that they were eating things that they would have to come back where they were to make a bracha, and yet only because they left somebody at home. That is why when they leave, they don't have to make a bracha achrona. When they come back, they don't have to make a bracha rishona. But if they didn't leave anybody at home, maybe it's dafka also zaken and chola, because maybe that's somebody who you're dafka going to go back to. Anyways, if they didn't leave a zaken or chol at home, then when they came back, well, before they leave, they would have to make a bracha achrona, and when they come back, they would have to make another bracha rishona. Kasha of Chizda, it's a kasha of Chizda, who says that if it's something that you have to come back in order to make a bracha achrona, then it would all be considered one kviyas. You wouldn't have to make a new bracha. Shtickle cliffhanger over here. This Gemara then continues basically to the bottom of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, so we're going to stop here. Just hold your thoughts. See, maybe now we can appreciate Rabbi Yochanan's opinion about Hesach Hadas. If you're going to think about other things between when you make Kiddush in Shul and when you get home to eat your wine sooda, see if you could focus on this question, mamish, the whole day until tomorrow's daf. See if you can manage to avoid any Hesach Hadas. Okay, where are we? Daf Kuf Aleph of Masechta Pesachim. Pretty awesome daf, right? So many inyanim. Kiddush b'makom sooda. Do you have to make Kiddush where you're eating? Rav says no, you don't. Rabbi Yochanan also says no, you don't. Shmuel says yes, you do. And the minig seems to be that we do Kiddush b'makom sooda. Shinui makom. What happens if you eat at one place and then you go to another place? So Rav and Shmuel say that at least in the context of Kiddush, in Shul, you would have to also make a bracha on the wine when you get home. Rabbi Yochanan says that you wouldn't need to make a bracha on the wine when you get home, but everyone agrees that it's because it's about Hesach Hadas. The Rav and Shmuel both assume that by the time you get home, you will have thought about other things and gotten distracted, therefore you have to make a new bracha on the wine when you get home. However, Rabbi Yochanan says that when you're going from shul to home to eat your Shabbos sooda, you're not going to be thinking about other things per se, therefore you don't need to make a new bracha. We had discussed, even when we talk about Shinui makom, does that apply to, so it's hard to tell exactly, because we had Shmuel who made Kiddush on the roof and then went down to the bottom floor and he made Kiddush again. But then we also saw a Brisa apparently that Shinui makom was only from one house to another house, but within one house it wouldn't be considered Shinui makom. You wouldn't have to make a new bracha. So mistam we passing like that. We talked about Hatov v'Metiv kind of in passing, that if you're drinking wine and they bring out a different bottle of wine, so you don't need to make a new bracha bori pri hagafen. However, says the Rashbam, if the second bottle of wine is a better bottle of wine, so then you'll say Hatov v'Metiv. Okay, fine. And then at the end we left off with a shtickle cliffhanger with Rav Chizda and Rav Sheshes about what happens if you are eating a meal, and let's say you had bread, and you're going to have to come back to wherever you are right now in order to say a bracha achrona, but then you go out to your friend's house in the middle. Do you need to make a new bracha on the food at your friend's house? So if Chizda says no, because it's all one kvius, it's all one, eating, because you're going to have to come back anyways at home, so it's all either one big thing. Whereas if Shesha says no, I don't care that you're coming back to make a bracha achrona, when you get up and you go somewhere else, it's Shinui makom, you have to make a new bracha. Friends, what did you think about Daf Kuf Aleph of Masechta Pesachim? Pretty good, right? Peace out.